unfinished business from the preceding meeting? Yes, Councilor Lane.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to reintroduce Council Order 2017-31, which was introduced at a prior council meeting and was objected to. So I'd like to bring it forward at this council meeting to open it for discussion.
All right. So Councilor Liang has brought Council Order 2017-31, which is on our council calendar. To body, is there anyone wishing to this time? Councilor Liang, yourself.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to take this moment to clarify for everyone that I offer this resolution to acknowledge an important conversation that's taking place across our nation, but more importantly, in our neighborhoods here in the city. As a deliberative body of the Quincy government, I believe it's important that we take a lead in this constructive conversation and better understand what people are concerned about. This term, sanctuary city, has been thrown around a lot, and many communities are debating whether or not to adopt that designation. And to be clear, that's not what my resolution calls for. I'm neither advocating in favor of nor against a sanctuary city designation for Quincy, and this resolution is simply about having a community-wide open discussion about these issues. For example, our local law enforcement, through their policies and procedures, are ensuring that the people who call Quincy home feel safe and secure in our community. But I think it's safe to say that there's not a wide knowledge of these procedures. My resolution calls on us, as the elected leaders of the city, to engage in a constructive conversation to begin a process of fact-finding and education, again, to get the facts. Of the councilors here today, I believe that we have different arguments as to what this term calls for, which doesn't have an actual definition. In this, we are no different than the people that we represent and the people in this room. In a time of fake news and alternative facts coming from both sides of the spectrum, it's our job and our responsibility to rise above and to get the facts. I believe a well-informed and engaged public is the best way that we can all move forward together. This issue of expanding the conversation and getting more people involved was central to why I ran, and it's very dear to my heart. We chose to run for office to serve the people of Quincy, and part of that service is bringing the community together for these kinds of conversations. Again, many communities have rushed into making a decision on this issue with little to no conversation or understanding. It's led to confusion and more misunderstanding on both sides of the issue. Taking a step to have a community-wide discussion is what I believe to be the only responsible way to look at this issue. Again, my resolution calls on the city, by way of collaboration between the administration, city council, department heads, and other appropriate parties, to engage in a thorough inquiry, including members of the community, to discuss the city's policies and procedures as they relate to federal immigration regulation and the potential local impact. We bring together community leaders, public officials, academics, advocates, and opponents on this issue to meet and talk about what this designation actually means. Quincy is our city, all of us. Not just this body, not just the folks in this room, but everyone. And everyone deserves to be part of that same conversation. Today I'm asking my colleagues on the council for support on this resolution to have the discussion, to acknowledge that the conversation's already taken place in our neighborhoods, and to include our city's government in that conversation. And with that, I'd like to make a motion to move this to Public Safety and Community Engagement Committee to engage in that conversation. And I understand my colleagues would also like to speak on that, but I'd like to make sure to introduce that motion as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So motion by Councilor Liang. Is there a second on the motion?
I'll second.
Okay, seconded by Councilor Harris. On the motion and on the motion to speak, Councilor Vaughn.
Thank you, Madam President. I took an oath over a year ago when I was first sworn in as a councilor at large. That oath was to obey the Constitution and to follow the rules and laws of the land. I also made a commitment to protect the taxpayers of the city of Quincy. My top priorities as a city councilor are education, public safety, and public works. This includes education in our Quincy public schools, making sure our police officers and firefighters have the proper resources to keep our city safe, making sure our public works department have the proper funding for new roads, sidewalks, and infrastructure improvements, while mitigating the traffic and parking concerns. We as a city depend on federal funding to help our taxpayers. The biggest area we rely on federal funding is in our Quincy Public Schools. We rely on $7.8 million of direct federal funding. Of that 7.8, 5.6 million of it is through 14 grants, which include the Title I funding for Snug Harbor, Clifford Marshall, Lincoln Hancock, and Parker Elementary Schools. Another important federal grant is the special education funding, which rely on our children with learning disabilities like autism and reading disabilities, including dyslexia. And the other $2.2 million we rely on is a national school lunch program for our kids. Being a former school committee member, I've been through the budget process. I will tell you, every year, we wish we had more funding for other programs. We've come a long way with the budget cuts some 8 to 12 years ago. We've been pioneers of building new schools like Quincy High School in 2010, Central Middle School in 2013, and we were just underway with the construction of the new Sterling Middle School. We have a statement of interest also with the MSBA for a new Swanham Elementary School in the years to come. I would not want to flirt with the possibility of not being able to build a new elementary school in Swanham. On the city side, we have taken advantage of $20 million of federal transportation funding over the last 8 years, an average of $2.5 million a year for the Adams-Hancock Green right outside here, Hannon Parkway, and MBTA station improvements. We've hired firefighters using federal money, as well as receiving Homeland Security equipment. Overall, the city of Quincy receives roughly $10.3 million a year of federal funding. $7.8 million is allocated for the Quincy Public Schools and $2.5 on the average on the city side. We're going to go into a little math here. For every $1 million, the taxpayer has to pay $25 on that million. $10.3 million times $25 is $257. So if we lost all our federal funding, every taxpayer would have to pay an extra $257 yearly on top of what the yearly increase is. Ultimately, with everything that I've discussed tonight, my obligation is to the taxpayers of the city of Quincy, as well as the children, the families, the seniors, and the veterans. Thank you, Madam President.
So thank you very much, Councilor DeBona. Anyone else wishing to be heard? Yes, Councilor Fitt.
Thank you, Madam President. And again, I figuratively rise not in support of sanctuary cities per se, but in terms of a process at this city council that I've had the privilege and honor of being part of for close to 16 years. And again, I want to make a distinction that may be lost here this evening. Is there is no order before this body this evening saying that we should declare Quincy as a sanctuary city. What we have is a resolution on the part of one of our members requesting that we look at the issues related to sanctuary cities, and how, in what way that may impact local practices here in the city of Quincy. I'm thinking in terms of this whole issue, that the right of persons to petition the government is something that's goes as far back as to the Magna Carta. It's clearly enshrined in the First Amendment. It's part of Article 19, Part the First of the Massachusetts Constitution. And essentially what we have is we have a very divisive and polarizing issue without question. But what we did have, undeniably, is a number of citizens, voting citizens, who have been requesting various counselors, and I'm sure many have received emails as much as I have. And so, for this to come before us, I've been hard-pressed trying to think of the time I remember when such a resolution, which again, distinction between an order and a resolution. A resolution is simply something asking for information. And I pose a question to my colleagues. The next time you think something's important to you or your constituents or it's raised, does it too have the danger of simply dying on the vine, not being referred to a committee where an appropriate discussion could be had? I mean, clearly, look at all of the folks we have on both sides of the issue who are here this evening, who really, within the context of an ordinary city council meeting, don't really even have the opportunity to be heard. But within the context of a public, and I want to stress, public committee meeting, that very opportunity would, in fact, really kind of present itself. I really think my colleague, my honorable colleague, Noel DeBona, as another councilor at large, raises some real serious issues, without a doubt, that there's some questions here. But the thing that we can't ignore is that a lot, and I mean a lot, has changed in a year. And it's something for a little, again, in terms of facts. Based on governmental data, I think it's important to point out that the Obama administration has deported more people than any other president's administration in history. That's about 2.5 million. It's not even counting his third year, his final year. In fact, they've deported all the sum of all the presidents of the 20th century. And again, between 2009 and 2015, that's more than 2.5 million people that have been deported. This doesn't include self-deported. This isn't those who are turned away or returned to their home country at the border. And part of the success in the level of deportation that came about was because during that administration, they had worked in creating the so-called Priority Enforcement Program. And they constructed that program in conversation with major chiefs and police enforcement local jurisdictions across the country. Now, from a police perspective, one of the issues that's really there is that they need to strike a right balance between getting and keeping people out of the community and still being able to have people living within their jurisdictions that will cooperate with police. The Major Cities Chiefs Association, which represents the 68 largest law enforcement agencies in the U.S., are very concerned with some changes that have taken place. And that was reflected, interestingly enough, when we were meeting here last Tuesday. Homeland Security issued that memorandum, which is that they're switching back to the Secure Communities program. And again, this is something that actually existed during the Bush administration, but tied into it also is the so-called 287G program that in fact can allow, again, it's voluntary to this point anyway, deputization of local enforcement agencies in carrying out the key mission of ICE around deportation itself. If you don't think that has possible, that commingling of those sources don't have serious tax ramifications for us, they do. And so again, whether I'm for sanctuary cities, which I personally am not, or whether you're opposed to it, the issues that are being raised are happening at a critical time, even as there's state legislation that's out talking about trying to make Massachusetts into a sanctuary state. So here's the rub. I mean, Councilor DeBona points out the critical connection between federal resources. And again, the president's threat to take that away from sanctuary cities. The Major Cities Chiefs Association has really opposes that, but when they've come out, they've asked an interesting question that we may have to ask. I've heard it referenced a couple of times that our current police practices actually represent the practices of a so-called sanctuary city. The question that the major police chiefs are asking will you take away federal funding solely based on the declaration of being a declared sanctuary city? Or are you going to take away those resources based on what those practices locally might be? So I guess I'm raising the complexity of these things to come up to say that the resolution in and of itself may well be a timely one. Not one that I would have brought, quite honestly, but now that it's brought forward, Councilor Liang is my colleague, and I have a responsibility, as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to a resolution like this, to support that. This body, in the time that I have served on it, hasn't run away from issues just because they're polarizing or just because they're difficult. We have often entered into that discussion, and quite honestly, through that conflict and through that discussion, often wisdom could prevail, and sane and smart types of policies emerge. And I won't go into to share with you all of the different things that I think have happened, but some of those particularly in the area of policing. So it's timely. I think it's important. We can't bury our heads in the sand in terms of what's happening in Washington. And so I would support Councilor Liang's request and encourage my colleagues to do the same so that we might have this discussion in greater depth.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, a lot of discussion has taken place regarding my objection to my colleague, Councilor Liang's resolution on holding a discussion on the topic of Sanctuary City proposed 2 weeks ago. First off, I want to make one thing perfectly clear before I speak on the resolution put before us again tonight. I will not support the term sanctuary city to be labeled on our great city. I would oppose, thank you. I would oppose any legislation that changes the city's current policies to include a formal designation as a sanctuary city. The City of Quincy's Police Department has not and does not enforce federal immigration law, and it never has. It does not run immigration status at traffic stops. It does not track immigrants. It does not ask witnesses about their status. However, if someone is arrested for a crime and is booked and fingerprinted, that information is relayed to the federal government, which will report back any outstanding warrants or, in some cases, a deportation order from Immigration and Customs Enforcement. At that point, police will ask ICE if they would like the criminal suspect held. This has been the policy for many years, and the police chief has said it is a rare occurrence in any event. As I have said many times before, slapping a label on our city just seems to be a solution in search of a problem, and one that seems based on people's prejudged positions and not the facts on the ground. My position tonight, and has been since almost the beginning of this process, is to try to come to a peaceful resolution. On Thursday afternoon, I told the Patriot Ledger that I was opposed to Councilor Liang's resolution. I was going to vote against it. You know, something happened on Thursday evening. Thursday evening, I held a Ward 6 community meeting, which was attended by about 50 people. One of the topics discussed was Sanctuary City, and simply what does it mean? My colleague, Councilor Liang, attended and answered some tough questions that were thrown at her. And I was pretty impressed with that. And I was happy that she came to assist me. During this exercise, I realized that people in my ward want to know more information on this subject. Many seniors who attended this meeting were confused and nervous about this very controversial and volatile subject, which has been in our headlines and on the nightly news that they watch and see each day. These folks were reaching out for answers. For that reason, I will support Councilor Liang's resolution and vote yes on a discussion, and just a discussion only. Remember, one of the things in the amendments, the Constitution is freedom of speech. We can speak on and discuss this. If for some reason my colleagues do not vote in favor of this, and there is a call for more discussion by my constituents in my ward, I will certainly accommodate them and hold community meetings if need be. So if I haven't confused you already, I've confused myself. But thank you, Madam President.
I'll be brief. I don't want Bill Harris to yell at me. I think we need to take some perspective on this. You know, I've really been disappointed with a lot of the comments that have been made by folks. I've had a lot of great conversations with people on both sides of the issue. But some of the comments have been just extremely nasty. And I guess I'm talking to the folks who are here because you're probably the folks who care most about the issue. Some of the comments have been really nasty. They've been really personal, really nasty. And they're just, we're better as a community than that, collectively. And insults have no place in a conversation. I don't care how you feel about the issue. Shouldn't be yelling at people, shouldn't be calling people nasty names and writing things on Facebook about them. I mean, it's shameful. We're better than that as a community. I expect more. Quincy has been and always will be a city that welcomes immigrants. That's our history and that's our future. From the Irish, the Italian, the Swedish, to the Chinese and Vietnamese, Quincy has always welcomed those seeking a better life. And we will continue to do so in the future. This is an important subject, and I get a lot of people very worked up about it, and they want to talk more about it. I'm okay with that. I'm not afraid of having a conversation. I welcome that conversation, and I think it makes sense that we have this as a discussion with residents. But I think that would be best done in a setting that allows councilors and residents to speak freely, ask questions of each other. This body doesn't do that. When something's before this body, as you saw tonight, there's not that same kind of discussion that can take place. Council rules aren't conducive to such a conversation. I'm willing, I've offered to Councilor Liang, I've offered to any other councilor, I'll co-host such a conversation. I'm willing to have this conversation. I think it's an important one that people care about with any councilor who wants to get together and host such a meeting. And I look forward to that public discussion. But this council isn't where conversations start. This body is where conversations conclude with action, with policy, with things that change the laws of our city. We either create new laws because there's a gap somewhere or something's not being done, or we change existing laws because they no longer reflect the way we feel about particular issues. This resolution offers no change in policy. It offers nothing other than let's have a conversation, let's discuss what a term means, a very highly charged, politically charged term. And for that reason, because I find both the resolution in its form and in its intent to be confusing, that's why I'm going to vote no. But I look forward to having a discussion. I'm ready to host that discussion and to participate with all of you and anyone else that wants to be a part of it. But in terms of this resolution, I don't think this is where the conversation should happen. I think this is where the conversation should end. So if we have a community meeting and there's some sort of issue that's brought up that we need to change current policy, then it comes here. And then we deliberate and we legislate and we change regulations to reflect the will of the community that we represent, and we put in place new policies or change existing policies. But this isn't the place where we just have conversations and discussions. that's better held in a community meeting, and that's why I'll be voting no. But again, I look forward to having this conversation with anybody that wants to have it in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Councilor Palmucci, you expressed my sentiments pretty much verbatim what I was planning to say. I think hearing and seeing the audience here, for public to have input, this is not the forum. We, as a ward council, I host public meetings, community meetings, and get that input as a standard. Any project that's going to the planning board, I bring it into the neighborhood and let the neighborhood get an understanding, an informal opportunity to have a discussion and have their questions answered and get an understanding of what that impact is going to be to them. It's all about doing your homework and having a process and recognizing what the role of this body is as a governmental policy, as the legislative body of the city of Quincy. I too will be voting no for the resolution.
Anyone else wishing to be heard? Anyone else? All right, very well. I'll just speak briefly and then we'll go for a vote. I support our law enforcement agencies here in the city, here in the state. I am proud of the work they do. As many of my colleagues have pointed out this evening, this before us this evening, this resolution is not asking us to become a sanctuary city, whatever that term means. I don't think this forum is the proper one, as many of my colleagues have expressed, to debate, and make no mistake about this. This is not a discussion. This isn't a study. It's a debate between two sides who are very hunkered down in their beliefs. And so I don't believe this is the forum for that. We have rules, we have procedures here. This is a deliberative body that puts forth legislation, not for folks to talk about what they think. It would be 9 people up here discussing their thoughts, not listening to the public. And again, a lot of these issues are important. I'm not afraid of this discussion, nor is anyone up here, any one of my colleagues. Again, I do not support this resolution. I will be voting no. But again, I do not believe that this is the proper forum for this discussion. So with that, I would ask the clerk to take the roll.
Councilor King.
No.
Councilor Crowe.
No.
Councilor DeBona.
No.
Councilor Finn.
Yes.
Councilor Harris.
Yes.
Councilor LaForest.
No.
Councilor Liang.
Yes.
Councilor Palmucci.
Nope.
President Hughes.
No.
3 in favor and 6 in no. Does not pass.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Yes, Councilor Finn.
Again, I do sincerely want to take some time to thank everybody on both sides who came out this evening. And what I'd really like to do is invite you all back in May when it's budget time.
Yes.
Please be out there, because that is the stuff that really matters here as well. So thank you all for your participation.
Great. Thank you, Councilor Finn. Reports of committees. Councilor Kroll.
Thank you very much. Now,
All right, we are going to go back to session. And I don't see Councilor Kroll. So we'll go back to reports of committees. Presentations of... Yes, Councilor Finn.
Forgive me, Councilor, I'm distracted. Again, I would like, with the unanimous consent of the body, to bring out of committee for discussion would be Order 2016-256. And Madam President, you correct me as Councilor Harris.
Yes, Councilor Harris.
Yes, at that,
Existing poll on wires.
yes. Yes, as far as the situation with Verizon and the poll at 125 Huckins, I would ask my colleagues to, I'd like to make a motion, I would ask that my colleagues, I'm speaking on, what to make a motion?
To do what?
I want to disapprove the, I'd like,
Urgent no vote.
So you're a no vote. That's going to be
That's,
That's
yes,
good here.
and if I could speak to it.
Okay, sure. Go ahead, speak
Oh,
to why you're going to vote.
Yes. So, folks, my colleagues, I held a community meeting, an infamous community meeting the other night. We started off with the Verizon put on a presentation. You were here when I asked, I think it was 4 times, that would they consider moving that pole, moving the antenna they were planning on placing. They had no intention at all to listen to me, let alone that night. They basically brought 4 people, they brought a scientist. In this case, this device that they're putting in is not the fix-it of the problem with the service in Squantum. It's only a line of sight. I have a constituent that has a young family that is, as she spoke here at the public hearing, the bedroom of her children are right across from where the antenna is being placed. For me, I believe that in this case, the needs of one outweigh the needs of a few that are going to have, it's only a few that are going to have improved service. I feel that Verizon has not acted with me as the counselor for that area in good faith, and I ask my colleagues to please vote no for that position of where that antenna is placed. And I promise you, if you come to me with the same situation, I will support you as well every time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Harris. Motion?
Need a second?
Yep. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilor Panic.
On the motion, yeah. Briefly, the request is to say no to Verizon. You had me at no to Verizon. The double pole Kings of Quincy. I'm just happy that other people are willing to vote no as well. So I will certainly second that and also vote no.
Okay. Councilor King.
Curiously, can we send this to the solicitor? Are there going to be any legal ramifications for Verizon coming back to us to sue us? Is that a possibility?
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to incur that expense. So,
I don't know.
It's in your official.
is this something to look into?
We could ask the solicitor. I know Assistant Solicitor Petkin is here.
Are we going to get sued if we say no? For saying no, yeah, for not putting up their tower. There are federal regulations that govern this over our city council's decision.
I would have to do some research on that. I don't know off the top of my head, but I don't know that the city has any contractual obligation with Verizon to put out poles where they want them put out. Otherwise, it would negate this being debated before this body. But they could just do it as a matter of right. But it's certainly something I would want to look into.
Then my question is, why did they even have to come up and speak in front of us in the first place? Is it just that, it makes, no sense? And it wouldn't be the first time we voted no and gotten sued as a body, right?
Okay. Great. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Yes, Councilor Panic.
This is more technical, and again, I learned as chair of public works in my areas, things of that very seldom contradict the ward councilor who's the issue is in that particular ward. But and Councilor Harris has done all the work in relation to this. But I did get a curious communication from the representative on March 3rd, essentially requesting, Ms. Mason, and she was requesting another public hearing.
Oh.
And I want to make clear, and I think I've already checked with the clerk, but certainly the one on the record, we already have a public hearing on this matter. That hearing was closed. And again, there was some agreement that they were going to meet with Councilor Harris, but we have had a public hearing, right?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Yeah, okay. No?
I just want to be very clear now that people are talking lawsuits, that the reason I'll be voting no is based on Councilor Harris's representation. After doing extensive fact-finding and communicating with his residents that there is a desire to not pass this based on the negative impact that it would have on one particular homeowner's property value, sight lines, potential health effects, and that this decision that I would take is based entirely on that information as well as the public hearing.
Ditto. Okay, thank you. Anyone else? No? Councilor Fox.
Through Madam Chairman, I think, of course, we have a law that says double poles must come down within 6 months, Councilor Palmucci. So I guess that'll be our countersuit when they have yet to follow our regulations. My curiosity, though, is procedurally, if we vote this down this evening, how does that then come back into committee? Are they legally able to refile the same request for an amended request of location?
And the city clerk.
At any time, they can bring it back in, but
It's not like zoning where you've got a no vote, it's dead for for a certain time. So
no,
Okay.
not to my knowledge.
Thank you.
Great. Anyone else? Seeing no one else, Madam Clerk?
Councilor King.
No.
Councilor Crowe.
No.
Councilor DeBon.
No.
Councilor Finn.
No.
Councilor Harris.
No.
Councilor LaFarge.
No.
Councilor Leeang.
No.
Councilor Calhoun.
No.
President Hughes.
No.
9 nays. The order does not pass.
Thank you. Thank you, my colleagues. Thank you.
Remember, you promised to vote for something that we know. So everybody write it down now. All right. Anything else further, Councilor Finn? Okay, thank you. Okay, Councilor Crowe.
Madam President, so earlier this evening, we held several finance committee meetings talking about 2 items in particular. First was 2017-003, which was the adoption of a finance policy and procedures. Committee debated that, made some changes, some amendments. So I would like to bring that out of committee and present it to the body and move passage on it based on the amendments discussed in committee.
Okay, motion to approve by Councilor Kroll, seconded by Councilor Finn. On the motion, Madam Clerk?
Councilor King.
Yes.
Councilor Crowe.
Yes.
Councilor DeBon.
Yes.
Councilor Finn.
Yes.
Councilor Harris.
Yes.
Councilor LaFarge.
Yes.
Councilor Leeang.
Yes.
Councilor Calhoun.
No.
President Hughes.
Yes.
8 members. Passes.
And also, this evening, Council Law 2017-28, which is an appropriation for $3,542,015 for the SBA Accelerator Repair Program. We have a presentation, obviously, by the project team and members from the Public Buildings Department, and I would like to take this out of committee and place before the body with a positive recommendation.
Motion to approve by Councilor Kroll, seconded by Councilor Devon. On the motion, Madam Clerk?
Councilor King.
Yes.
Councilor Crowe.
Yes.
Councilor DeBon.
Yes.
Councilor Finn.
Yes.
Councilor Harris.
Yes.
Councilor LaFarge.
Yes.
Councilor Leeang.
Yes.
Councilor Calhoun.
Yes.
President Hughes.
Yes.
9 members. Passes.
Great, thank you. I think that does it for reports of committees. Yes, no,
Yes.
traffic. Traffic.
No traffic, it's ordinance committee. Thank you, Madam President. Earlier this evening, we did have an ordinance committee on the pending LGA before us. That matter has been continued to March 20th at 6:30 p.m.
Great, thank you. Presentation of petitions, memorials, or remonstrance. Yes, Councilor Finn.
Yeah, again, I know we oftentimes acknowledge the passing of people that we know or deeply part of Quincy. And I just really wanted to acknowledge the loss of, the sudden loss of a former neighbor of mine, who is Jerry Mulcahy. Again, wonderful family here in Quincy, wonderful extended family of the Mulcahy's, the Marks, and different people. Again, this came very suddenly, and it's just a tragic loss. Hard to understand at times when this happens, but I just ask everybody to keep that family in your thoughts and prayers. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman. Anyone else? Yes, Councilor LaForest.
Thank you, Madam President. I would just like to offer condolences we laid to rest over the weekend. William and Thelma Powers were the victims of the house fire in House Neck a few weeks ago. It's been a long 3 weeks. And I just want to ask people to continue to keep Michael Powers, a survivor, and his extended family in your thoughts and prayers, as well as to thank the Quincy Fire Department, the Quincy Police Department, and the community. We had an extensive fundraising campaign to help with their expenses, and the family has just expressed their deep gratitude to House Neck and to the city of Quincy, and I just want to share their sentiments. So please keep the Powers and Timko families in your thoughts and prayers.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor President. Councilor.
Thank you, Madam President. If I could at this time, I'd just like to extend my congratulations to the new 27 firefighters that just got sworn in as new recruits. You know, just thinking about what Councilman Forrest just said about the 2 passings of the Powers family, as well as there was a fire on Circuit Road this past weekend. There was a fire at 80 Clay Street this week. 4 were injured and 4 were displaced. 4 firefighters were injured on Circuit Road and 4 were displaced in that house. A lot of people say, wait a minute, 27 new hires. There's a lot of people that retired, and the city, as it's growing, we need to increase police and fire. So, with that being said, sometimes people question, well, that's quite a bit of a number. Just seeing what has happened in the last month in itself, what has happened in the winter with the fires that have happened. I give props to the administration and the mayor for moving the city forward with the new hires and the recruits, and they're going to have to go to the academy and graduate there as well. But I want to say thank you to their, we came there along with a few of my colleagues to the swearing-in ceremony on the 24th here. It was a good crowd in here. So I want to thank those 27 new recruits, thank them, congratulate them, as well as their families. Thank you.
Anyone else? Motion for this resolution.
Sorry.
Scheduling of committee meetings or public hearings. Anything? Okay. Anything? All right. At this time, just to let people know, March 20th will be our next meeting. At 6:30, we will be starting the ordinance committee meeting. Moving into our regular council meeting at 7:30, and looking at the calendar, April is upon us. Okay.
Motion adjourned.
Motion to adjourn, Councilor Calhoun. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.